Just FYI, good to know. You good with this?
Oh, yeah. What did you keep? Oh, your crowd. Like, your crowd, right?
Okay, hello everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Liz Cohen. I'm the president of the National Democrats. So I just want to take a moment to welcome you all. Thank you for being here, and to all our members and the commentary for their work in setting this up with us.
Hello everyone, I'm Carlos Palacio, president of Brooklyn Young Democrats. Excited to see you all here. Happy spring, finally it feels like a spring day. So thank you to everyone who's made it happen to the campus week.
Hello, everyone. I'm Serena Fabre, president of the Queens County Young Democrats. I just want to give a shout out to all my Queens people in the building. And I wanted to welcome you all to our event.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tariq Israel, president of the Bronx Young Democrats. I just want to say thank you to everybody here. Shout out to my people from the Bronx here. Yeah, let's get into the forum.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Salah. I'm the president of the NYU College Democrats. So it is now.
All right, so I'm gonna quickly explain the format before Carlos over here is gonna introduce all of our candidates. So the ground rules are each candidate gets 90 seconds to introduce themselves, and then the moderators will ask a question. Each candidate gets 90 seconds to respond. There is also an opportunity for 30 seconds to rebuttal a fellow candidate's answer. This format will go on for the first 40 minutes or so, give or take, and then after that, we will open it up to questions from the audience. Trying to limit to young Democrats in the room, as this is our young Dem forum. And young Democrats get a minute or less to ask their questions.
And we want to thank and welcome Brad Lander, Adrian Adams, and Whitney Kelson. We will, with the difficulty of scheduling, we're going to have Michael Blake and Jessica Ramos arrive a little later, but we're going to start. We do want to say that we invited all candidates to be present to speak to young people and the issues that we care about. We invited Andrew Cuomo, Scott Stringer, and Zohar Mandami. They could not make it. Zello Myrie wanted to make it, but he's unfortunately under the weather. So we're going to begin with the first question. Tell us, what are your top 3 issues that you want to focus on?
You can use the phone. Oh, okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you, Liz, Carlos, Serena, Tyreek, and Saha. Let's give it up for them and everybody who put this together. It is really important. I mean, it's not an easy time to fight for our democracy right now, but it's like the most urgent. So I just want to say, anybody who's stepping up to lead as a young Dem and say, we're going to build institutions that represent the needs of young people and insist that our Democratic Party and our city live up to those values, is doing something that my hat is off to. Even today, like every day, something head spinning is happening. And today, to see the student Mohsen Madawi, a Columbia student, swept up by ICE and deported from his citizenship interview, it's just like, this is a time for stand up. And that's what I'm looking to do. I'm running for mayor to restore honest and effective leadership to City Hall instead of corruption, to stand up and fight Donald Trump when he deports students or denies people freedom of speech or comes for our budget, and to deliver a more affordable, safer, and better run city for all New Yorkers, and most especially for young people, because this can't be a city where you can imagine you would be able to afford to rent or buy a home, where childcare costs $25,000 a year, where several thousand of our mentally ill neighbors are sleeping on our streets and subways. My 3 top priorities are ending street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, building 500,000 new homes, lots of them affordable to folks like you, and expanding childcare, so by the time you got 2-year-olds, there's a childcare seat for every one of them. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. All I have is thanks to our hosts and all of you for coming out. My name is Whitney Tilson. My 3 big issues are, number 1, affordability, especially housing. In the United States, we have had 21 consecutive months of rents declining. In New York City, where they are already the highest, they are still rising. It's simple supply and demand. A lot of people want to live in New York City, but we've made it almost impossible to build new housing and even to maintain our existing housing stock. Secondly, New Yorkers don't feel safe, and it's not their imagination. The 7 major felonies are up more than 30% in the last 5 years. On subways, felony assaults are up 150% before thankfully coming down a little bit, at least in the first quarter of this year. But we, about 5 years ago, particularly the state legislature, passed a series of laws that basically decriminalized all sorts of low-level crimes. We've seen an explosion of those crimes. That's led to more serious crimes. We need to fix that. And thirdly, our school system accounts for roughly more than a third of our enormous city budget. We spend over $40 billion. That's more than $40,000 per child, and a national average, for perspective, is $17,000. Yet what are we getting for it? A school system in which nearly half of the students can't read at even a basic level. I was one of the founders of Teach for America. My first job out of college 35 years ago, been on board of KIPP charter schools, so I've been deeply involved in trying to deliver educational opportunities for every child here. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Young Dems, for hosting us tonight. It is a pleasure to be here with you, although I must be honest, you all know I literally have to be out of here in 10 minutes. I got a hard stop. I'm moving around a lot. So I apologize right off the cuff, but we're tag teaming like we normally do around here. So we've got a lot in common. My number 1, I am a mother and a grandmother. I want my children to stay here. I want my grandchildren to stay here. And so it's so important to me that affordability is at the top of my list, that we can keep our families here in New York, the greatest city in the nation. So as I have been working as the leader in the first women majority city council, the most diverse city council in the history of the city of New York, proudly being a leader where our mayor has not stepped up to lead, I have had to do that and take the initiative and do the right thing as far as the budget is concerned. So in budgeting, it's affordability at the top of the list, making sure that we have housing. I have approved over 120,000 new units of housing for the city of New York and more. It is also going to be taking a look at public safety as well. We have common goals, but there may be different ways to get there. People are looking at bringing in more police officers when we have an attrition rate that is great. We have 2,400 at least vacancies right now when it comes to NYPD. We need to get creative about filling those vacancies and not looking on the outside by keeping our law enforcement officers there and retaining them as well. Getting them out of the business of mental health, getting them out of the business of social services where they never intended to be in the first place, and moving those responsibilities where they belong. Yeah. And in addition, we have to make sure that we are a strong city. No matter who the mayor is, we've got a target on our back in the way of the chaotic administration of Donald Trump. You gotta have somebody that's willing to speak up, which if you all have been watching me, you all know I'm not scared of Donald Trump. He's got his boxing gloves on, but mine are bigger and my mouth is even bigger because I'm a New Yorker. Unlike him, he is a Floridian. Stay in Florida, we're gonna fight you. We're gonna fight you in New York City, and we're gonna bring the power with the first woman mayor of the city of New York. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. So our first question, and we'll start with Speaker Adams and then work our way back down the line. We'll ask the lady about housing. So I guess, what are the plans to build more housing in the city? And specifically, did you support the city of yes? Did it go too far? Not far enough? And especially given the cost of the city. Most young people are being driven out of the city, and what can we also do to address that?
Oh, yeah. City of Yes came to the city council in one iteration and left the city council in a totally different iteration. And we call it City for All because we had to do all and do our very best. Senator Jessica Ramos, ladies and gentlemen. We had to do our best in making sure that it was palatable and that it was something that we could indeed pass in the city council. So what I did was I insisted on $5 billion to make City for All happen. That is going to build us infrastructure in the places of the city that need it the most. That is going to make sure that we have that we can retain our NYC residents in livable conditions and our Michelama residents, and that we can maintain and create more affordability for what that looks like, because what's affordable to you may not be affordable to me. So it is up to us to determine together what affordability looks like for every corner of this city. So it's going to be City for All. What we have invested in City for All, and did I mention the city FEPS vouchers, where we want to make sure that people stay in their homes and are not victims of eviction, where they have a safeguard and can stay in their homes. Yes, I was very instrumental in passing City for All. I will not call it City of Yes, because that is not the way that it left our city council. And we had to make sure that we had an agreement so that everybody had an opportunity to have a place to live. And so the one thing that I insisted as the Speaker of the Council is that we will never be the council that says no when people need a place to live. And that includes everybody in this room that needs and deserves an affordable place to live. As the leader of the council, that has always been a priority of mine. As your next mayor, that will even increase because we will have more power on the other side of City Hall. Just moving from one side to the other side, we're gonna get this thing done the right way.
I'm happy to yield to Senator Ramos if you would like to have her introduce herself, like we all got the opportunity.
Okay.
The first question we all got was the three priorities.
Yes, what are your three priorities? Do you want me to do both?
Oh, okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm New York State Senator Jessica Ramos, candidate for mayor and proud former executive board member of the Queens County Young Democrats. Many, many years ago, I was the vice president of diversity and membership. And in Queens County, it's taken a little while, but actually the Young Dems in Queens are thriving under the current administration. We've been able to recruit people from every corner of Queens, which is what we've always wanted, and precisely the type of administration that I plan to run. Making sure that we have a city hall that is truly reflective of the type of people that make up our city and our lived experiences. I am so proud to be running for mayor in order to champion mental health services and workforce housing and universal childcare, which have been near and dear to my heart. But I've also announced a youth jobs guarantee because New York is for everyone. And I feel that working people for a while now have felt that the prosperity of New York City is somehow unachievable for many of us, particularly in Black and brown communities. And for young people, the future can seem rather bleak. And that's not right, and that's not fair, because we are such hard workers, and we want to make sure that we're cleaning up New York and that we are putting progress above any promises that have been made throughout this campaign. Thanks for having me.
I'll credit Speaker Adams for passing, not City for All, you said?
Yes.
You call it City for All. I've known it as City of Yes. It addresses one of the biggest problems we have about new housing, and new apartment construction, the zoning problems. But I have spent extensive time speaking with the private sector developers who are where that growth is going to have to come from, because we are likely looking at a recession nationally. Our tax revenue may be hit, and the federal government is probably going to be going to be reducing its funding. So any plans you hear that are going to be rooted in more tax revenue, more city spending, I think probably aren't realistic. We need to, I come from a private sector background, 30 plus years in the business world. And when I talk to private sector developers, where that construction is going to have to come from, the most common comment I hear is, quote, they treat us like the enemy. Their dealings with the city, they feel like it's a hostile environment. The word developer is a negative word here in the city, and we've got to flip that around. We have to compete to make New York City an attractive place to invest, where they can earn a good return on their capital because they can invest elsewhere. And it kills me when I talk to developers who've been developing here for decades, who are instead building not just places you might expect, Austin or Nashville or whatever, but they're developing in Newark but they want to develop here, but we've got to reduce the barriers. It's not just zoning, it's permitting and approvals and all the way through the process.
So my entire career has been about creating and preserving affordable housing and protecting tenants. For 15 years before I got into elected office, I ran 2 affordable housing nonprofit groups, the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center for Community Development. We preserved and created thousands of affordable homes in the city council. And fought to protect the rent laws and close the loopholes that were getting tenants evicted year after year after year. In the city council, I led the Gowanus rezoning, which is where more affordable housing is going up than anywhere in New York City. 8,000 new units, 3,000 of them genuinely affordable to low-income and working-class families, and a comprehensive modernization of the public housing nearby, affordable artist studios, new open space. We can grow the city in a way that creates genuinely affordable housing in neighborhoods people love. As controller, I financed the preservation and creation of more affordable housing than any controller in history, almost as much as all the previous ones combined. $2 billion the city's first social bonds for 7,000 units of low-income housing. And I made a pension fund investment that saved the 35,000 rent-stabilized units that were put at risk when Signature Bank failed. Everyone preserved as affordable rent-stabilized housing at 11% return for our retirees. That's the kind of leadership I will bring to City Hall. 500,000 units over 10 years, including 50,000 affordable homes for New Yorkers like you to buy or rent on just 4 of the city's 12 municipal golf courses. And we have 12, there's 12 golf courses, 2,500 acres. If we take 4 of them, still plenty of tee times. At the other 8, 50,000 homes. The new Mitchell Llama that you guys could afford to buy in great new neighborhoods.
No golf for Trump.
The Trump course is definitely high on the list of the ones we build ours.
Just don't tell too much of Queens then.
That one's in the Bronx.
Well, so I have to say that as I've continued to campaign across the city, being a part of the generation that's been drowning in student debt has really been a hindrance to be able to buy in our city. I mean, it used to be that someone, even with just a high school diploma, would be able to raise a family and buy a house in New York City, and that hasn't been true since like the 70s. That's not fair when we know that productivity has gone up, and right now, even young professionals who are lawyers, I hear are 2 or 3 sharing an apartment in order to be able to make rent. That is not the type of economy that we want to put forth for the future of our city. This is why I want to make sure that we are actively fighting for a rent freeze for rent stabilized and rent controlled tenants by means of property tax reform, a kind of unknown issue that we know the city has been out of compliance on and has been a hindrance into buying real affordable and building real affordable housing in our city. Right now, there's a bunch of property tax abatements that big real estate gets, and we're just supposed to wait for affordable housing to just trickle down. Meanwhile, our parents are still waiting for Reaganomics to trickle down. And that's not right. We have to make sure that in the city, we have a steady stream of building affordable housing if we're ever going to make a real dent into the demand that we have. So I have a bill in the state senate called the Jobs and Housing Act that I would be able to do outright as mayor, leveraging our taxpayer dollars and our union pension funds to build co-op city style housing. So it's not just low income rentals, but modest equity homeownership opportunities, so that we can actually reward the people who have been working the hardest and actually paying taxes in New York City.
We would like to give Agent Adams, if you would like a closing statement before you leave. Yes. We're very nice. We're very nice.
Thank you so much, and I apologize again. This is some schedule that I have. I call it evil, some call it something else. But just to have a few minutes with you all, young Gems, and my colleagues, of course, has been very, very special for me this evening. Once again, I am Adrienne Adams. I am running for the people. I am not running for power. I don't need it. I'm running to empower you, the people. So we've already been doing this work. The only candidate that has already negotiated successfully 3 city budgets, working on the 4th one now, and it is for the people. We have restored public library service, cultural institutions, over $40 million already, child services, education, and so much more for the city of New York. As mayor, just imagine how much more I can get done, once again, just by moving me from one side of City Hall to the other side where there has been no leadership, but where I have indeed stepped up to lead the people. Thank you for hearing me tonight, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We're speaking to us right now. The next question is going to be on immigration. We are seeing an unprecedented anti-immigrant attacks to both undocumented and documented immigrants. Legal immigrants are also being targeted. From graduate student Mahmoud Khalil, who was exercising his First Amendment, to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is currently in an El Salvador prison, who has not been charged with any crime. How will you make sure to protect in this constitutional crisis, where the Supreme Court has said that they have to bring them back? How are we going to prevent New Yorkers from ending up in that situation? Protect and uphold our sanctuary city laws, and protect from coordination between ICE and local law enforcement. Anyone who wants to begin? Yes, actually, Michael Blake, would you like to introduce yourself and then answer the question?
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Blake. Forgive the apologies. We were just at the visual fruit in the Bronx with the Dominican families, who, as you all saw, one is who one that lost their lives right now. As it relates to the question, let's be very specific. ICE has no business at places of worship, at schools, at community centers. The absolute garbage that happened today of them arresting and detaining the young man who came out of his naturalization interview is another reminder that we have more work to do consistently over and over again. When we're thinking about what the priorities are, as a son of Jamaican immigrants, it's important to me to make sure we communicate. All of us are in this together. Latino, Caribbean, African, all of us have to be fighting for our communities intertwined. And we have to make sure that we're not utilizing any of the government support to be detaining and removing people. That is not who we are. To the previous question around priorities as well, I'm running for very clear reasons. First and foremost, I want to make sure that you make and keep more money in your pocket. And we can do that by having a local median income, but we can be very focused in saying that anytime that DC comes to attack us and try to cut off our funding, we should withhold sending funds to DC. Second, we got to make it more affordable for you to live here in New York City. And I do believe we should ban using credit scores when it comes to rent and home ownership applications. Third, we have to be very intentional about how we reimagine housing and public safety all at the same time. And so at the end of the day, my name is Michael Blake, and I'm asking for your vote because we want to change what we're doing in our city. Our website is blake4nyc.com, and I'm ready to talk to you more with more than 90 seconds in the next question. Thank you, everybody.
I strongly support the sanctuary city status that New York City has had in effect since the Koch administration that has been maintained under mayors Giuliani, Bloomberg, and every mayor since. I think we need to, in this area and in virtually every area, stand up to the lawless and authoritarian Trump administration. As mayor, I will do that and protect our immigrants.
I was proud to be one of the co-sponsors of the Sanctuary City Law in the New York City Council, and then Speaker Melissa Martin-Garrido strengthened it to say, we will not have ICE on Rikers Island. And let's be clear, if someone has, been convicted of a serious or violent offense, that's a different story. But the reason we say no to that is that we know that ICE can't be trusted with due process. And what do you need more than seeing what happened to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who they've admitted they made a mistake, and now he's being tortured in an El Salvadoran prison, and they want to come into our city and be on Rikers Island, or be able to come into our schools or public hospitals or shelters? Like, no way. So when I am mayor, I will stand up and enforce those sanctuary city laws. We will get that office at Adams opens it off Rikers, because people deserve their due process. 87% of people there are awaiting their trial. And let's be clear, Eric Adams helped with the xenophobia, pointing at immigrants in our city as though they were a problem, and helped pave the way for what is happening. You gotta earn that statue in the harbor, and as next mayor, I will make sure that we stand up and fight for immigrant New Yorkers, and also help make sure that our students and our young people have a pathway to succeed, that folks can get out of shelters into good jobs and become the next set of New Yorkers that are creating and growing and building this city.
The migrant influx that took place over the last few years could have been a moment where we capitalized on the talent that immigrants bring to our city, but instead Eric Adams decided to demonize them and use the budget in order to make scapegoats out of our immigrant community, when we know we lost population throughout the pandemic, and actually we haven't regained it fully. What we can do as mayor is make sure that we're creating entry points into the economy to make sure that our immigrant population is able to take care of themselves, their families, and contribute to the city's coffers, like we've seen throughout time with our street vendors who have lacked an orderly system where we can actually generate extra revenue for the city of New York because it can't levy its own taxes. We've left a lot of money on the table by not providing them work permits and the opportunity to actually just dignify their human existence. Yes, as the daughter of formerly undocumented immigrants, I want to make sure that we are keeping ICE out of every public institution, whether they're churches, schools, hospitals, libraries, you name it. But we also need to go back to Action NYC, which was a program of the previous administration where immigrants were able to access lawyers who would help them actually apply for the asylum that they're seeking. Only a third of immigrants have actually been able to start their paperwork. And a few years later, that's just unacceptable, because we want them to be able to work and contribute to our city. So I want to be able to do that and make sure that we're supporting the backbone that actually holds up our city. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we continue, I announced some candidates coming before we announce kind of the ground rules. So just for everyone, you'll have 90 seconds to answer questions and 30 seconds for rebuttal if you would like to rebuttal. And up next, we have Tyreek, the president of the Bronx Young Democrats. The next question.
All right, y'all, very simple question. I like to keep it simple, straightforward. The city has labeled our youth as wild, in the streets they're called YNs. And we see a lot of labels thrown at the youth. And I feel like a lot of it comes from just misunderstanding and misrepresentation. So I want to know, what is your stance, and what are you doing about getting the youth more productive, getting them into jobs, homes, and getting them on the right path? Because the city have seen youth like this before. I watched the movie in the 80s. I seen what y'all was doing. It wasn't nice. So I just want to know, what is your plan for the youth moving forward in New York City?
Sure, I can start. So I'm someone who was stopped and frisked when I was 19 years old during the Bloomberg administration. And I very much feel like not a lot has changed since, where Black and brown youth are constantly targeted and made to feel like we don't have a prosperous future before us. I mean, a lot of people who end up gentrifying our communities end up with better opportunity than those of us who are actually born and raised in this city and are still trying to make it. This is why I want to make the summer youth employment program year-round, to make sure that there is always an opportunity for a young person, especially between the ages of 16 and 24, so that yes, they're busy, and yes, they're contributing to their household, but also so that they can explore their talent and really find out if they're a best person or not, and hopefully be able to achieve greater job satisfaction in the future. And hopefully, if we still have Social Security, start contributing a little earlier towards our retirement. That's real, because, I mean, look, we're talking about an affordable housing crisis, we're talking about a climate crisis, we're talking about a mental health services crisis, and the responses to each of these should actually yield hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs and opportunities for the young people of our city. NYCHA alone, rebuilding and helping NYCHA is really important, and making sure that there's workforce development that actually is inclusive of not just the people who are coming from other states to find opportunity, but everybody who actually lives here is really, really important to put forth the economy that is inclusive, because New York City is for all.
It's a rough time to be a young person anywhere in the world, and certainly in New York City. I mean, the pandemic kind of knocked us all backwards and made the school year put people in isolation. The rise of cell phones and distraction and attention economy, it just makes it hard for people to focus and pay attention. We've seen big elevation in mental health issues. So I'm the son of an elementary school guidance counselor in a public school, but there's over 100 New York City schools missing guidance counselors or social workers. We are not paying attention to our students' social and emotional well-being or their mental health. So I want to make the investments that make sure there's social workers and guidance counselors in our schools. Part of my plan is to make after school universally accessible in elementary and middle schools, and not just so there's childcare for families, although they need it, but so all the things kids need to be learning that they don't get during the school day. Thank God all of life is not reading and math tests, but arts and sports and extracurriculars and financial literacy and trips out into this city. I was in a great school last week where they were doing Shark Tank. They got to make products, and one kid had designed this cool glove, and he's like, this will make you a good basketball player, this will make you a good football player, this will show you where the best donuts in your neighborhood are, I'm like, give me that glove. Another young woman had designed a little product that would help you on your morning routine, like wash your face and brush your teeth for you. Our young people can rise up and lead the city, but only if our schools provide them with the mental health and social and emotional supports that everybody needs.
I too want to talk about schools. It's the most important thing the city can do for its youth. And despite spending massive amounts of money, as I talked about earlier, for far too many of our children, the system is failing. The single most important educational metric I would point to is fourth grade reading. The latest NAEP scores just came out, and 47% of 10-year-olds, fourth graders, are not reading at even a basic level. That is total failure, and those children are by and large consigned to broken, ruined lives if you can't read by age 10. So I would create choice and accountability for across the system. What does that mean? It means the 15% of schools that are public charter schools, those that we have among the most successful in the country. I have served on the board of KIP for more than 20 years, and other high-quality charter schools should expand. Our 9 specialized high schools, 4 of them were opened under Mayor Bloomberg. Why not open more of those? But also our charter schools are evaluated every 5 years. Those that fail to demonstrate that they are educating children will lose their charters. Why aren't the other 85% of public schools held to the same degree of accountability? And lastly, I visited a charter school called Comp Sci High just last week. And it's focused on internships, and so they are graduating students either into college but also into high-paying jobs, because the students through high school are getting great internships.
First, as someone from the Bronx, I want to make sure people understand, if you're going to have a mayor who can actually connect to the people That means you gotta have sneaker game, gotta be strong. So I see you out here, right here, to that degree. We have to make sure that you can actually keep a job and make more money as entrepreneurs. We have to make sure we make it easier for you to be able to thrive, because it doesn't make sense we're talking about young Democrats that you are working in New York, but then you have to live in New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, because you can't afford what's happening here. And we actually have to make politics hopeful again, because right now everything people are seeing is all the nonsense in DC, and they're like, you know what, I actually don't want to do this anymore. And so the way we actually do this in a different way, first, we got to reimagine what's happening when it comes to education. Yes, we have to make sure that from college to career, but even for the people that don't go to a four-year institution, because we have to stop demonizing someone who does go to a four-year institution. So if someone goes to 2 years, they're an entrepreneur, help them have that pathway. We actually have dedicated housing that's helping more people to actually be that entrepreneur in residence. When we talk about Mission Model 2.0, it's about reimagining so that everyone, including our young leaders, can have more affordable housing to get access to. But then we have to reimagine what's happening in our cities. Our city is old, it is slow, and it is hopeful, and it is judgmental too often to each and every one of y'all. And I'm running as someone who's a young Black man who is saying that I want for us to restore how we look at politics right now. I was inspired when I was able to go get trained and work for President Obama. I came back home to the My Brother's Keeper program. We're doing this work right now so that you can see that kids can grow up in Crescent and Burnside have a chance to make it.
We already know that the LGBTQ plus community and the trans community are under attack by the Trump administration. NYU Langone bent the knee to the Trump administration on their executive order targeting innocent trans children. So what can New York City do to take concrete steps to protect these communities that are under attack by the Trump administration?
I think I have my answer. Well, I'm proud to represent the largest transgender population in all of New York. In Jackson Heights, we've been such a welcoming place to people from every corner of the planet that we actually have provided a safe place to live for so many transgender people coming from across the country and coming from other countries. And frankly, I've heard from many constituents who have had trouble being able to access the transition and hospital access that they were initially enjoying and have been promised. So when private hospitals are not doing the right thing by our transgender population, we're gonna need our city hospitals to step up. And we shouldn't be shy about allowing every single New Yorker to live their truth, because it leads to our public safety to actually allow every single New Yorker to give us their best in whatever capacity that is. So I'm proud to say that I've been a champion for LGBTQ rights for a very long time, having been born and raised in a district as diverse as where I live and where I'm raising my boys now. But we need the next administration to actually stand up to Trump, his bigotry, his transphobia, his xenophobia, his homophobia, his bigotry completely. And we should be very unabashedly standing up for our LGBTQ community because they are an integral part of the fabric of our city.
Let's observe first what a difference it makes when people stand up instead of bending the knee, right? We had law firms that just caved to Trump and take the whole idea of equal justice under law and trash it. And then we had a couple of law firms, including one here, Wilmer Hale, say no way. We've had universities like Columbia cave to the House Oversight Committee. We saw Cornell, and today we saw Harvard. Let's give them their credit. Saying, no, we're not going to do that. And then you have somebody like Cory Booker get up and spend 26 hours on the floor of the House. And we need New York City, the place of Stonewall, to say we're going to stand up and not be a city whose mayor is bending the knee for his own pardon, but it is fighting like hell for New Yorkers. So I have a plan that's both part of my reproductive rights plan and for gender affirming care for trans New Yorkers. And I'll say it was developed in large part by my wife, Meg Barnett, who's here, who was for 10 years the chief of staff and general counsel of Planned Parenthood of Greater New York. And we're raising two young Democrat, well now they could just be in the room, I don't know, really raising them anymore. But here's the plan. Health and Hospitals has about a $4 billion budget. About $1 billion of that is federal funding, Medicaid. Less than $100 million is abortions, contraception, and gender-affirming care. So I have proposed an independent authority where we'll use city, state, and private funding to keep paying for that care. So every New Yorker who needs reproductive care or contraception or gender-affirming care can get it, and we keep the $1 billion in Medicaid funding so we can keep our health and hospitals strong. That's what it'll look like in part, to have New York City stand up and join in those folks who don't have the need.
I think the Trump administration's demonization of trans Americans is despicable. I have a cousin married to a trans person who lives here in New York City, in fact, so it's very personal to me. I will say, though, that we Democrats need to be smarter on this issue. First, we lose the debate nationally, and the Republicans used it against us regarding high school sports and college sports. I do not think anyone who went through puberty as a male and benefited from testosterone should be allowed to compete in certain contact sports. It's a matter of fairness and safety, and I speak as a father of 3 daughters who played contact sports through high school and into college. Secondly, regarding gender-affirming care, I think we need to be very careful about puberty blockers for young people. I think it should be families' decisions, not the government decisions, but these drugs are very powerful. The effects are irreversible, and so I think they should be black box labeled, if you know what that means in the pharmaceutical industry.
We have a rebuttal for 30 seconds from Jessica Ramos.
Well, I don't have daughters because I'm a boy mom. I have 2 boys who are 11 and 13, but I do so happen to be a woman myself. And let me say that whether you're a cisgendered woman or a transgender woman, you are a woman. I didn't think that I would have to say that in a democratic forum, but here we are, creating very clear distinctions amongst the candidates to make sure that we are unabashedly, unwaveringly standing up for our transgender community. There is very little difference among human beings, only the ones that we create, the constructs that have been taught to us.
Thank you.
Making sure that we are protecting every single person and that they have opportunity is really important for the next mayor to do.
Thank you so much.
Whether it's Eric Adams or universities, they need to actually recognize that it's cowardly what they are doing and bowing down to Donald Trump. Eric Adams is trying to keep his ass out of jail. Full stop. And universities have billions of dollars in endowment and effectively are saying, you know what, we might lose funding, possibly, potentially, so let's just stand down. You cannot be silent on what's going on to our trans community, in particular our trans and color community, who are over and over again being abused over and over and over again in large parts of the stigmas that are happening in our communities. I've done this work. I did this work when I was an assembly member supporting Boone Health, because we understood that too often it was not just the conversations that were happening around employment injustice. It was housing injustice of people being kicked out of their homes and not having someplace to go. Who are we as a people if we're going to be silent about one? I'm real clear. I don't allow discrimination against anybody. Because if you allow it against one, then someone else will get discriminated against. And it is our responsibility, to your question, to make sure that we are working in collaboration with our lawyers as well as our funding partners to provide these protections. Because all that Donald Trump is trying to do, and all that others like Cuomo want to continue, is effectively saying, I want you to be afraid. That is not how we move. That is not how we lead. And it is our job when leading a $114 billion budget to say, we stand with the trans community, we stand with our people because you are New Yorkers.
Our next question will begin with Senator Ramos. What concrete steps will you take to ensure that mental health services combating rising rates of anxiety, depression, and substance use are accessible, affordable, and stigma-free, particularly for vulnerable groups like youth, seniors, and those facing economic hardship?
That's a really great question, because as I travel the entire city, I feel as though one of the greatest unifying factors across boroughs, across ethnicities, across household incomes, is that people are really feeling anxious, and many New Yorkers aren't sleeping very well. And I think that has led to a lot of road rage, a lot of conflict within our families. I mean, Eric Adams touts that murders are down. Well, rapes of women are up, and child abuse is up, and domestic violence is up. And we actually aren't doing a very good job of supporting New Yorkers in resolving their conflicts. So making sure that we're weaving mental health services into every aspect of our lives, whether it's education from childcare through CUNY, at our workplaces, and certainly at our city hospitals, that shouldn't just worry about our physical health, but also our mental health is really important, especially as we destigmatize mental health care in certain communities. I know especially the Latino community and people of color have a tough time being able to share that they've seen and been able to talk to someone about the problems they're facing. But the fact is that if these services are available at city hospitals, well, then you can tell your nosy neighbor that you run into whatever you want, whether it was a backache or a heartache. But what was important is that you were able to reach someone who can help you in the language that you speak. So I'm out of time, but obviously this is a bigger topic about how to build out a mental health services program where we're actually building the workforce that we need, from social service workers to cognitive and behavioral therapists, in the languages that New Yorkers speak, so that we're truly keeping each other safe.
I've talked already about what I would do in schools with guidance counselors and social workers and focus on social and emotional well-being. I've talked a little about strengthening New York's health in hospitals, which is a critical source for mental health. So let me use this to talk about what is the #1 commitment I'm making in this campaign, which is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We do not have to be a city where several thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleep on subway platforms and the stoops of our building. We have the resources to change that. So I went out with the subway outreach teams, the scout teams, with the intensive mobile treatment program, to Fountain House's Clubhouse Day treatment program. I've been in mental health court. We audited the Adams administration's failing homeless suites program, which just pushed people from place to place, from subway to street to housing and to jail and right back again. And then we looked at what's working in Salt Lake City and Denver and Houston, which is a housing first model, which takes people from the street that say they don't want to go into shelter, says we have a supportive housing or SRO unit for you with services, and it works to keep people stably housed 70 to 90% of the time. It will work here in New York City. We can end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness in my first term and make it a safer city for everyone and a more humane one.
So your question is exactly right. There's been an alarming rise in the rates of anxiety, depression, self-harm among young people, and only among young people. People over age 25, it hasn't changed. It's doubled for people under age 25 since 2007. Anyone want to know what happened in 2007? NYC launched the iPhone. We've been running an uncontrolled social experiment on our young people with these devices, and particularly social media. So first thing I would do is I would make sure to get past what they've been struggling with. I don't know why this is so hard. Banning all cell phones in our K through 12 schools. I was just at Comp Sci High, and they have a very simple system. When the students come in, it is completely doable. Number two is there are very few things I agree with Florida on these days, but banning social media for people under age 16 I think is a fabulous idea. And I think in particular, this is of course more a national issue. But the idea of allowing China through TikTok uncontrolled access to manipulate our young people's brains, TikTok is the worst of the offenders. We've got to fix that as well.
You have to treat everything in a comprehensive manner. We talk about mental health, and there's an element of social media, that's a good point, but let's start here. First of all, we shouldn't have cops trying to address mental health concerns on the street because they're not trained to do that. We need mental health professionals who are actually doing that. If you get serious about expanding out the 988 hotline so people can actually be aware that it exists, if you draw down more funding so overdose prevention centers actually get the funding that they need, bring down funding from the state so you can focus on opioid settlement funds. Take the steps to address involuntary confinement so that a person who is truly in need and help can get the help they have consistently. It's already law on the books, we're just not implementing it. You do those steps, you can actually take a step further when it comes to public safety and helping us at the same time. Yes, there's elements as well that we can't ignore around social media, no question about that. You do have to look at how do you ban social media in particular and cell phones for young people. But we also have to be cognizant as well that algorithm discrimination is real. And it is driving a lot of what is happening being fed, in particular the communities of color, what we're seeing, what we're receiving, and that continued at a heightened pace throughout COVID. You can't separate the dynamics of people being home for 2.5 years, being fed information over and over that was negative and not helpful to them, and then coming out on the other side and the ramifications of that. Lastly, work I did in supporting funding for diversity in medicine, we need more community of color and women mental health therapists to help all of us. It doesn't make sense that we're not having a continual conversation around that level of support. If something is going on in your body, someone needs to help you, you need to also have someone that can help you when it comes to your mind as well.
Thank you so much. Well, now we're going to open it up for Q&A. So we would like to open it up. We're going to please line up right behind that second row. We're going to be doing please less than 1 minute for your question. Same rules will apply here as we go through the Q&A. Open Q&A. Go ahead, Jeff, 1 minute.
Well, candidates, Controller Lander, as you know, we were marching on, what's the mic? Is this better?
Yeah, a little bit. There.
Is this?
Perfect.
Okay. Controller Lander, as you know, we were marching on Fifth Avenue with a hands-off protest, and many of us were watching out for potholes and all that. It was a disaster. Stop my phone. Okay. So my question is, as you know, there's so many outdated infrastructure in our city, with potholes especially. How our roads, buildings, signage, schools, and other facilities are outdated. So as mayor, is there anything you guys would be able to do to ensure that our infrastructure is more updated, like growing cities such as Phoenix and others? That's pretty much my question. Thank you.
I'll take this one since we were together going through those potholes on Fifth Avenue, and I was marching with 504 GEMS, the Disability Rights Clinic, and I had Dr. Sharon, who's blind, with me, and it really forces you to see just how, bad the infrastructure is. This has been a passion of mine actually for years. I helped bring participatory budgeting to New York City, that we started doing it back in 2011 or 2012. And it lets New Yorkers vote on improvements they want to the infrastructure at their playground or in their kids' schools. And so then people propose these projects. And the first one that we did in my neighborhood was a dog run that was $450,000. It took 5 years to build the dog run. So I launched this effort to create a capital projects tracker for New York City that takes all those infrastructure projects and figures out how long they're taking and why they're taking so long. And as mayor, I'll use that data as well as the city's 10-year capital plan and my knowledge of municipal finance and how much money we actually have to prioritize climate infrastructure, transit infrastructure, affordable housing, and make sure we can make the investments that you are talking about, because the future of the city absolutely depends on it.
Anyone else want to answer?
Sure.
We have to address the infrastructure because fundamentally, potholes and double parked cars while your buses and cars are always delayed. We have a 1,800, 1,900 infrastructure system in 2025, which is leading to more flooding and not addressing climate change in any real way. And we can't continue to say that we are the greatest city, but everything we have is old and slow. You look at our trains, if you live in other places around the world, if you're in Japan in particular, literally, if you were late by a second, the train is gone. And so we can think about ways around automation. You can have greater automation when it comes to our trains and train cars getting closer without losing jobs, because too often that fear happens in that conversation. But when we're thinking about how to reimagine where we can be, we can do this by examining what Smart City Expo just did last week and is doing across the country. Learn from other places around the world and make our infrastructure actually better. And when you think about it, we can take funds within city government to do this better. We shouldn't have a $1.4 billion being spent on NYPD overtime when we can't actually address public safety, when you actually take those funds to reimagine what our communities could be. For example, I have said, let's find ways to actually renovate the playgrounds at nice developments and use the solar power to provide energy to those developments that are often wondering about heat and hot water. That's the kind of reimagination we can have around infrastructure across our city that will have, if you allow me to be your mayor.
There's a lot to say about infrastructure, and yes, potholes are definitely a concern because the city looks like Swiss cheese. But honestly, the most important infrastructure that we can be focused on right now is when it comes to climate resiliency. I represent a district that was hard hit by Hurricane Ida. Donald Trump just announced that $300 million in FEMA funding for cloudburst flood mitigation would be taken away from New York. And actually a third of that funding, $100 million, would be removed from my district alone. So let me say that fighting against Trump and actually having a real idea about how to withhold our federal taxes from the federal government is really critical for us to play chess with a bigot who doesn't even want us to be able to survive a storm that used to happen every century and is now happening much more frequently. Japan even has caverns that they've built in order to make sure that there is water, there's a place for the water to go. And we're just so far behind that we even need